March 14, 2026, 4:47 a.m. local time, the central Persian Gulf. The guided missile destroyer USS Higgins is running dark. No navigation lights, no active radar emissions, just passive sensors drinking in every electronic signal within 200 nautical miles. Then the Combat Information Center lights up. 14 fast-moving surface contacts, bearing 045, speed 42 knots, closing distance, no IFF transponder, no radio communication, no AIS broadcast. 14 contacts moving in a spread formation directly toward the Abraham Lincoln Carrier Strike Group. The watch officer doesn't hesitate. General quarters, all hands man your battle stations. The alarm tears through the ship. Sailors who were sleeping 90 seconds ago are now sprinting through steel corridors, muscle memory carrying them to their assigned positions. Watertight doors slam shut. The ship transforms from a vessel at rest into a weapon of war in under 3 minutes. They had no idea they were sailing into the most one-sided naval engagement since the Gulf War. What followed over the next 17 days would reduce the Islamic Republic of Iran Navy to a force that existed on paper only. I'm your host at Navy Axis, where we break down the most critical naval operations shaping global power. Today, we're covering a campaign that rewrote the rules of naval warfare in the Persian Gulf, a systematic dismantling of an entire country's fleet in less than 3 weeks. Because by the time it was over, Iran wouldn't have a navy. It would have a memory of one. To understand how it got to this point, you need to go back 3 weeks. February 19, 2026. The Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps Navy seized a Greek-flagged oil tanker transiting the Strait of Hormuz. The vessel, the Olympia Star, was carrying 2.1 million barrels of crude bound for South Korea. 31 crew members taken hostage. No demands issued. No communication. 2 days later, IRGC fast attack craft fired warning shots at a Marshall Islands flagged container ship. The rounds impacted less than 50 meters from the bridge. The ship diverted to Oman. 3 more commercial vessels rerouted within 48 hours. Global oil prices spiked 11% in a single trading day. Then came February 24th, the incident that crossed every red line Washington had drawn. The Iran frigate Sahand, a Mauj-class vessel displacing 1,500 tons, locked its fire control radar onto the destroyer USS Carney while it was conducting a routine freedom of navigation transit. The Carney's Spy 6 radar detected the lock instantly. For 97 seconds, an Iranian warship had a targeting solution on an American destroyer. 97 seconds where one miscalculation could have started a war. The Carney held fire. Her captain, Commander Elise Bradshaw, reported the incident immediately to 5th Fleet headquarters in Bahrain. The message went up the chain within minutes. CENTCOM, the Pentagon, the National Security Council. The response took 4 days to formulate, but when it came with the full weight of American naval power. Operation Persian Sweep was authorized on February 28 by direct presidential order. The objectives were explicit: neutralize the Iranian naval threat in the Persian Gulf, restore freedom of navigation, and ensure no Iranian warship could threaten commercial shipping or U.S. forces for the foreseeable future. The assets allocated were staggering. The Abraham Lincoln Carrier Strike Group, already positioned in the Arabian Sea, pushed through the Strait of Hormuz on March 1st. The Lincoln carried Carrier Air Wing 7, 78 aircraft including F/A-18E/F Super Hornets, EA-18G Growlers for electronic warfare, and E-2D Advanced Hawkeyes providing airborne early warning coverage across the entire Gulf. The Bataan Amphibious Ready Group moved in from the Red Sea. 3 ships carrying 2,200 Marines and a complement of AV-8B Harriers and AH-1Z attack helicopters. 2 Virginia-class submarines, their names still classified, slipped beneath the thermocline layer into the Gulf's shallow waters. Each carried 12 Tomahawk cruise missiles and Mark 48 AD-cap torpedoes capable of destroying anything afloat. The cruiser USS Gettysburg and destroyers USS Higgins, USS Truxtun, and USS Nitze formed the Surface Action Group. Combined missile capacity: over 300 vertical launch cells loaded with SM-6 interceptors, Tomahawk land attack missiles, and SM-2 area defense rounds. Iran's entire navy was about to face the most lethal concentration of naval firepower assembled in the Persian Gulf since 2003, and they had no idea what was coming. March 2nd, 2026. The first phase began not with a missile, but with silence. EA-18G Growlers launched from the Lincoln at 2:15 a.m., climbing to 35,000 feet over the central Gulf, their ALQ-249. Next-generation jammer pods activated simultaneously, flooding Iranian naval communications with broadband electronic noise. Every radar screen along the Iranian coast dissolved into static. The IRIN's communication network went dark. Shore stations couldn't reach ships. Ships couldn't reach each other. The entire command and control architecture that coordinated Iran's naval operations collapsed in minutes. The Iranians were blind and deaf. At 2:38 a.m., the first strikes hit. 4 FA-18E Super Hornets from VFA-143 dropped AGM-154 joint standoff weapons on the Bandar Abbas naval base. The GPS-guided glide bombs struck the pier facilities where 3 Iran frigates were moored side by side, the Jamaran, the Domovan II, and the Dina. The explosions were visible from 30 miles away. Secondary detonations from onboard munitions turned the pier into a wall of fire. Satellite imagery captured 3 hours later showed all 3 frigates listing heavily, their superstructures gutted by flame. 3 warships eliminated before a single Iranian sailor could man a weapon station. Phase 2 began at dawn, March 2nd, 6:12 a.m. The IRIN corvette Bayandor was patrolling off Karg Island when the Higgins detected her on passive radar. The Bayandor displaced barely 1,100 tons. She carried a single 76mm gun and 2 outdated C-802 anti-ship missiles with a range of 75 miles. The Higgins carried 96 vertical launch cells. Her SPY-6 radar could track over 1,000 targets simultaneously. She outweighed the Bayandor by 9,000 tons. If you like videos that break down the overwhelming power of America's fleet, hit subscribe now so you don't miss what happens next. Commander Bradshaw, now commanding the Surface Action Group's Southern Element, transmitted a warning on international maritime frequencies. Iranian naval vessel, this is United States warship. You are operating in a declared exclusion zone. Reverse course immediately, or you will be engaged. The Bayandor's response was to activate her fire control radar. Fatal miscalculation. The Higgins launched 2 RGM-84 Harpoon anti-ship missiles at 6:14 a.m. Each Harpoon carried a 488-pound blast fragmentation warhead and traveled at 560 miles per hour, skimming 15 feet above the wave tops. Impact at 6:16 a.m. Both missiles struck the Bayandor amidships within 2 seconds of each other. The first punched through the hull and detonated inside the engine room. The second hit the superstructure and turned it into shrapnel. The Bayandor broke apart and sank in 11 minutes. 47 of her 140-man crew were later recovered by Iranian rescue boats. 4 warships down. Day 1 wasn't over. By nightfall on March 2nd, U.S. forces had engaged and destroyed 2 additional fast attack craft, Thondar-class missile boats carrying C-704 anti-ship missiles, caught transiting from Bushehr toward the central Gulf. Both were eliminated by Hellfire missiles fired from MH-60R Seahawk helicopters operating from the Truxtun. The engagements lasted less than 90 seconds each. Total Iranian losses on day 1. 6 surface combatants destroyed, 2 severely damaged. 0 American casualties, 0 American ships hit. The IRIN's response came on March 4th, and it was exactly what CENTCOM predicted. At 9:31 p.m., Iranian shore-based batteries on Abu Musa Island launched a salvo of 6 Noor anti-ship missiles, Iranian copies of the Chinese C-802, targeting the Lincoln Carrier Strike Group. The missiles traveled at Mach 0.9, hugging the surface at 12 feet altitude. They never had a chance. The Gettysburg's AN/SPY-6 radar detected the launch signatures within 4 seconds. The Aegis combat system classified the threats, calculated intercept solutions, and presented firing recommendations to the weapons officer in under 2 seconds. Batteries release, weapons free. 6 SM-6 missiles left the Gettysburg's vertical launch system in a ripple fire spanning 8 seconds. Each SM-6 accelerated to Mach 3.5, climbing to altitude before pitching over into terminal dive trajectories against the incoming Noors. 6 launches, 6 intercepts. All 6 Iranian missiles destroyed at ranges between 14 and 22 miles from the strike group. The counterstrike was immediate. 2 Tomahawk cruise missiles launched from the Nizza struck the Abu Musa battery positions 12 minutes later. Satellite imagery confirmed both launchers destroyed, along with the fire control radar that guided them. The Iranians had fired their best shot. The answer came in 12 minutes. Over the next 48 hours, the tempo intensified. CENTCOM wasn't waiting for Iran to reconstitute. Every hour that passed, American forces pushed deeper into Iranian-controlled waters, hunting down every Iran vessel that remained operational. March 5th. The Iran's most capable remaining warship, the Sahand, the same frigate that had locked radar on the Karni, was detected leaving Bandar Abbas at 1:20 a.m., attempting to reach open water under cover of darkness. She didn't make it. A Virginia-class submarine, positioned in the approaches to Bandar Abbas since March 1st, had been tracking the Sahand's acoustic signature for hours. The submarine's sonar operators could hear the frigate's twin diesel engines, her propeller cavitation, even the hum of her generators. At 2:08 a.m., the submarine launched 2 Mark 48 AD-cap heavyweight torpedoes from a range of 4 miles. The Mark 48 is the most lethal torpedo in any Navy's arsenal. It travels at 55 knots, carries a 650-pound high-explosive warhead, and uses active and passive sonar to track its target with near-perfect accuracy. The Sahand's crew detected the incoming torpedoes at a range of roughly 2 miles. They had perhaps 90 seconds. They attempted evasive maneuvers, hard rudder, maximum speed, deployment of acoustic decoys. None of it mattered. The first torpedo struck the Sahand beneath the waterline on the port side, detonating against the keel. The explosion broke the frigate's spine. The second torpedo hit 14 seconds later near the stern, destroying the propulsion system. The Sahand sank in 8 minutes. Iranian rescue vessels recovered survivors through the night. Iran's most capable surface combatant was gone, and the campaign was only 4 days old. March 7th through March 12th became what naval analysts would later call the mop-up phase. With Iran's major combatants destroyed or damaged beyond repair, the remaining Iran fleet consisted of smaller vessels, common-class missile boats, BH-7 hovercraft, and a fleet of armed speedboats operated by the IRGC Navy. These were the forces Iran had designed for asymmetric warfare: fast, numerous, expendable. In theory, they could overwhelm a larger force through sheer numbers and close-range attacks. In practice, they were targets. On March 8th, a swarm of 23 IRGC fast attack craft launched from multiple ports along the Iranian coast, converging on a simulated attack run against the Lincoln Strike Group. The boats were armed with RPGs, heavy machine guns, and short-range rockets. Their tactic was simple: rush in at maximum speed, launch everything, and hope something got through. The MH-60R Seahawks spotted them at 47 miles. The helicopters relayed targeting data to the Surface Action Group, which built a real-time picture of every boat's position, speed, and heading. At 30 miles, the first warning was broadcast. At 20 miles, the second. At 15 miles, the order came: weapons free. What followed was not a battle. It was an erasure. Seahawk helicopters engaged the outer ring of boats with AGM-114 Hellfire missiles. Each Hellfire locked onto its target with millimeter-wave radar guidance. 1 missile, 1 boat. 8 boats destroyed in the first 60 seconds. The surviving boats scattered but continued closing. At 8 miles, the Truxton's 5-inch gun opened fire, its radar-guided rounds achieving a hit rate above 90% against the fast-moving targets. Each high-explosive round weighed 70 pounds. 1 round was enough to disintegrate a fiberglass speedboat. 5 more boats destroyed in 2 minutes. The remaining 10 boats broke formation entirely. Some turned back. Some went evasive. 3 continued their attack run. Those 3 were engaged by the Gettysburg's Phalanx CYWS, a 20mm Gatling gun firing 75 rounds per second. The system was designed to intercept incoming missiles traveling at Mach 2. Against speedboats moving at 40 knots, it was overwhelming. All 3 boats destroyed in under 4 seconds. 23 boats launched. 23 boats destroyed or disabled. Total engagement time, 14 minutes. No American casualties. No American vessels damaged. Comment, sweep, if you think CENTCOM made the right call pressing the offensive. By March 12th, the numbers told the story. Over 20 Iranian surface combatants of all classes had been confirmed destroyed. Iran's operational fleet had been reduced to roughly 40% of its pre-conflict strength, and most of what remained was either hiding in port or too damaged to deploy. The IRIN's sole remaining logistics ship, the Karg, a 33,000-ton replenishment vessel and the largest ship in the Iranian Navy, was destroyed on March 10th by 2 Harpoon missiles fired from F/A-18S while she attempted to resupply a patrol group east of Qeshm Island. Without the Karg, Iran's remaining ships couldn't stay at sea for more than days at a time. The attrition rate was accelerating, not because Iran was fighting harder, but because American intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance assets had mapped every remaining Iranian naval asset, every patrol pattern, every port departure, every radar emission. The U.S. Navy wasn't just winning, it was hunting. And inside the Pentagon, a debate was forming that had nothing to do with capability and everything to do with strategy. The question arrived on the desk of the Secretary of Defense on March 13th in the form of a classified assessment from CENTCOM. At current attrition rates, the IRIN will cease to exist as a conventional naval force within 7 to 10 days. Recommend review of campaign objectives. The Situation Room meeting that followed lasted 4 hours. On one side were the Hawks. Their argument was clean. Finish it. Destroy every Iranian warship, submarine, and naval facility. Remove any pretense that Iran could threaten maritime traffic in the Persian Gulf conventionally. Force Tehran to accept that its navy was gone and negotiate from a position of total naval inferiority. The logic was compelling. If you've already sunk 80% of a fleet, what strategic purpose does the remaining 20% serve? Leaving a crippled force afloat only gives Iran something to rebuild around. On the other side were the strategists, and their argument was more nuanced. A navy, even a crippled one, gives a government options, conventional options, ships that can be tracked on radar, monitored by satellite, and engaged by weapons designed to destroy them. Remove those options entirely, and Tehran's military establishment doesn't surrender. It adapts. It pivots to capabilities that are harder to track and harder to stop. Shore-based anti-ship ballistic missiles. Iran had been developing these for years. The Khaliji Fars and the Fateh 110 variants. Weapons that could be launched from mobile platforms deep inland and strike ships at ranges exceeding 300 kilometers. Unlike a frigate sitting in port, a mobile missile launcher could be repositioned in hours and hidden in any warehouse or tunnel. Covert mine warfare. Iran maintained one of the largest mine inventories in the world, an estimated 5,000 to 6,000 naval mines of various types. These could be deployed not from warships, but from civilian dhows, fishing boats, or even commercial cargo vessels. A single mine could close a shipping lane for weeks. Attacks on Gulf state port infrastructure. If Iran couldn't fight the U.S. Navy on the water, it could strike the ports that the Navy depended on. Jebel Ali in the UAE, Khalifa Port in Abu Dhabi, the logistics facilities in Bahrain that housed 5th Fleet headquarters. The paradox was clear. The faster the U.S. destroyed Iran's visible fleet, the faster Tehran would pivot to weapons the Navy couldn't intercept as easily. A crippled but existing fleet gave Iran a reason to negotiate. A destroyed fleet gave Iran a reason to escalate. The debate wasn't about whether the U.S. could finish the job. That was never in question. It was about whether finishing the job would make the next phase of the conflict harder. March 14th. The night the Higgins detected 14 fast-moving contacts closing on the Lincoln Strike Group. This was the IRGC's final conventional gambit. Intelligence later revealed that the attack had been ordered directly by the IRGC Navy commander, Rear Admiral Alireza Tangsiri, who understood that if his remaining fast attack craft didn't act now, they would be picked off one by one in their ports. The 14 boats were the best the IRGC had left. Each carried 2 C-704 short-range anti-ship missiles with a range of 20 miles. The plan was to approach in a spread formation, launched 28 missiles simultaneously at close range, and overwhelmed the American defenses through saturation. It was the same doctrine Iran had practiced for 30 years. Mass attack, accept losses, get close enough for the missiles to matter. Against any other navy, it might have worked. The Higgins detected them at 61 miles. Within 90 seconds, every ship in the strike group had the 14 contacts plotted, classified, and assigned to weapon systems. The Growlers jammed their communications first. The 14 boats could no longer coordinate. At 30 miles, the Seahawks engaged. 4 Hellfires, 4 boats gone. At 20 miles, the Higgins and Truxtun opened fire with harpoons. 6 missiles against 10 remaining boats, 5 direct hits. The surviving 5 boats launched their C-704 missiles at maximum range, a desperate salvo of 8 missiles fired without proper targeting data, their onboard seekers searching blindly for radar returns that the Growlers were actively suppressing. The Gettysburg's Aegis system tracked all 8 missiles. SM-2 interceptors destroyed 6. The Phalanx CIWS on the Higgins took the remaining 2 at a range of 1 mile, shredding them into fragments that splashed harmlessly into the Gulf. The 5 surviving boats attempted to retreat. They made it 11 miles before Seahawk helicopters caught them. 14 boats launched, 14 boats destroyed, 8 missiles fired at American ships, 0 hits. Total U.S. damage, 0. The engagement lasted 22 minutes. After March 14th, the IRIN and IRGC Navy effectively ceased offensive operations. There was nothing left to operate with. The combined losses exceeded 25 surface combatants, including frigates, corvettes, missile boats, fast attack craft, and Iran's only fleet support vessel. The Bandar Abbas naval base was 60% destroyed. Bushehr's naval facilities were cratered. The island garrisons at Abu Musa and the Tunbs had been stripped of their anti-ship missile batteries. Iran's naval capability had been reduced to submarines, 3 Kilo-class diesel boats, and roughly 20 midget submarines, and whatever shore-based missiles could be hidden from American ISR. Everything else was gone. Declassified after-action reports estimated that Operation Persian Sweep cost the U.S. Navy approximately $780 million in munitions expended. The missiles, torpedoes, bombs, and gun rounds consumed over 17 days of operations represented less than 2% of the Navy's annual procurement budget. Iran's losses were irreplaceable. The Iran's surface fleet represented decades of acquisition and construction. Most of the destroyed frigates and corvettes had been built domestically at painfully slow rates, 1 or 2 per decade. At pre-conflict production capacity, rebuilding what was lost would take 15 to 20 years. The U.S. Navy had spent 17 days and $780 million to set Iran's naval capabilities back by 2 decades. The strategic implications rippled outward. Oil prices, which had spiked during the initial hostilities, began stabilizing by March 18th as commercial shipping resumed normal transits through the Strait of Hormuz under U.S. Navy escort. Lloyd's of London reduced its war risk insurance premiums for Gulf-bound tankers by 40% within a week. China, which imported roughly 27% of its crude oil through the strait, issued a carefully worded statement calling for restraint by all parties, while quietly increasing its orders through alternative supply routes. Russia, engaged in its own strategic calculations, offered rhetorical support to Tehran, but no material assistance. Moscow's navy had its own problems. At the United Nations, an Emergency Security Council session produced no resolution, vetoed by the United States, as expected. The diplomatic theater was irrelevant. The facts on the water had already decided the outcome. Inside Tehran, the debate mirrored Washington's, but in reverse. The hardliners wanted escalation, mine the Strait, launch ballistic missiles at Saudi oil facilities, activate Hezbollah cells against Israeli targets. The pragmatists argued that every escalation pathway led to further destruction of Iranian infrastructure with no achievable military objective. The pragmatists pointed to what remained. Iran's air defense network was intact. Its ballistic missile force was untouched. Its nuclear program, though damaged by the 2025 strikes, was slowly reconstituting. These were assets worth protecting. Starting a broader war to avenge a fleet that was already gone served no strategic purpose. By March 20th, Back-channel communications between Tehran and Washington, conducted through Omani intermediaries, produced an informal ceasefire framework. Iran would cease naval provocations and release the crew of the Olympia Star. The U.S. would halt offensive operations against Iranian naval targets and establish a maritime coordination mechanism to prevent future incidents. Neither side called it a victory. Neither side called it a defeat. But the numbers didn't lie. Over 25 Iranian surface combatants destroyed, 3 naval bases severely damaged, 2 island garrison missile batteries eliminated, 1 fleet support vessel sunk. American losses, 0 ships, 0 aircraft, 4 sailors injured, none critically, from a minor fire aboard the Truxtun caused by a malfunctioning weapons elevator, not enemy action. The Persian Gulf campaign of March 2026 demonstrated something that military planners had theorized but never proven at this scale. A modern carrier strike group supported by submarines, electronic warfare aircraft, and networked sensors could systematically dismantle a regional navy without suffering meaningful losses. The technology gap was not a gap, it was a chasm. Iran's fleet fought with courage. Individual IRGC boat crews charged into certain death, following orders they must have known were suicidal. Iranian frigate crews manned their stations even as American missiles bore down on them. The bravery of individual sailors was never in question. But bravery doesn't stop a harpoon missile. Courage doesn't jam an Aegis radar. Determination doesn't outrun a Mark 48 torpedo. The outcome was never in doubt. The question that remains, the one still being debated in classified briefings in Washington, Tehran, and every allied capital watching from the sidelines, is what comes next. Iran still has its submarines. It still has its mines. It still has its ballistic missiles and its network of proxy forces across the Middle East. The Navy is gone. But the threat hasn't disappeared. It has changed shape. And in the Persian Gulf, where the water is shallow and the stakes are measured in millions of barrels per day, a threat that changes shape is often more dangerous than one you can see on radar. The USS Abraham Lincoln is still on station. Her air wing is still flying. Her escorts are still scanning. Because in these waters, the mission never ends. It just changes name.